The greatest burden many of us carry isn't physical. It's not financial. It's not even our circumstances. The greatest burden many of us carry is the weight of other people's expectations, opinions, and judgments. We spend so much of our lives entangled in what others think, what others are doing, what others have accomplished. Now, wouldn't that be something to consider? Wouldn't that be worth examining? The possibility that what's holding you back isn't the economy, isn't the competition, isn't your background or your education, but your attachment to things that were never yours to carry in the first place. The high cost of attachment. Let me ask you, how much time do you spend each day thinking about what someone else is doing? How much energy do you expend worrying about someone else's opinion of you? How much of your potential remains untapped because you're busy comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20? The cost is extraordinary, and I don't just mean the emotional cost, although that's significant. I'm talking about the cost in terms of your potential, your productivity, your possibility. I once met a man who had a brilliant business idea, truly brilliant, the kind that makes you think, why didn't I think of that? He had the skills, he had the connections, he had the drive, but he never launched it. And when I asked him why, he said, well, there's this other company doing something similar, and they've been at it for 5 years, and they have all this funding. He was so fixated on what someone else was doing that he paralyzed himself. He gave up his dream because he was attached to a comparison that didn't serve him. That's what attachment does. It creates unnecessary friction. It's like trying to run a race with your feet tied to someone else's pace. You might be capable of sprinting, but you've limited yourself to someone else's jog. And here's what's fascinating. That other company, they went out of business 2 years later. His idea was actually better, but he never gave himself the chance to find out. The cost of attachment isn't just emotional. It's existential. It's the difference between the life you're capable of and the life you settle for. The illusion of control. Now, let's talk about why we get so attached in the first place. It's often because we harbor this illusion that we can control things that are fundamentally beyond our control. We think we can control what others think of us. We think we can control market conditions. We think we can control the pace of our progress relative to others. We think we can control outcomes. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a fantasy. And fantasies make poor foundations for a life of achievement. Here's what you can control: your effort, your attitude, your responses, your growth, your habits, your thoughts. Everything else is outside your jurisdiction. I remember working with a woman who was devastated because her product launch didn't go as planned. She had done everything right: market research, quality control, marketing, distribution. But a competitor launched a similar product at half the price a week before her launch. She was beside herself. She kept saying, it's not fair. I did everything right. I asked her, did you control your effort? Yes, she said. Did you control your attitude throughout the process? Yes. Did you learn and grow? Yes. So what exactly went wrong? She looked at me puzzled. Nothing went wrong, I said. You controlled what you could control. The rest was never yours to control in the first place. The mistake wasn't in your execution. It was in your expectation that controlling what you can control guarantees a certain outcome. It doesn't. It never has. That's the illusion that keeps us attached. We think if we just worry enough, obsess enough, compare enough, we can somehow bend reality to our will. But reality doesn't bend that way. The detached person isn't detached from effort or excellence. They're detached from the illusion of control. They understand the difference between influence and control. They pour their energy into what they can influence and release what they can't control. And in that release, there's a power that the attached never discover. The art of letting go. So how do we let go? How do we release these attachments that limit us? First, we have to recognize that letting go isn't a one-time event. It's a practice. It's something you do daily, sometimes hourly. It's a muscle you build. Second, we have to understand that letting go isn't the same as giving up. This is a crucial distinction. Giving up is abandoning your goals. Letting go is abandoning your attachment to how those goals must be achieved or when they must be achieved or who must validate those achievements. Third, we need to replace attachment with commitment. Attachment is rigid. Commitment is flexible. Attachment says, it must be this way. Commitment says, I'm devoted to this outcome, but I'm open to many paths that might lead there. Let me share a personal example. Years ago, I was working on a book. I had a very specific vision for it. I was attached to that vision. I wanted a particular publisher, a particular release date, a particular marketing plan. And I was miserable because the process wasn't conforming to my attachment. A mentor of mine, wise beyond his years, said to me, "Jim, are you committed to writing a book that serves people, or are you attached to writing a book that satisfies your ego?" That question changed everything for me. I realized I was committed to serving, but I was attached to the form that service would take. Once I let go of the attachment while maintaining the commitment, everything flowed. The book found its form. A different publisher, a better one for that particular message, came into the picture. The timing, which wasn't what I had planned, turned out to be perfect for the market conditions. That's the art of letting go. It's not abandonment of your dreams. It's abandonment of your insistence that those dreams unfold according to your limited perspective. The committed person says, "I will persist until I succeed." The attached person says, "I will persist until I succeed in exactly this way on exactly this timeline." One is powerful. The other is prison. The courage to focus on your own path. Now, once you've begun to detach and let go, you create space for something remarkable, the ability to focus on your own unique path. Your path, not your neighbor's path, not your competitor's path, not your idol's path. Your path. This takes courage. It takes courage because your path won't look like anyone else's. It takes courage because your path won't necessarily be understood or validated by others. It takes courage because your path will sometimes be lonely. But here's what I know about courage. It's not the absence of fear. It's the judgment that something else is more important than fear. What's more important than your fear of judgment, your fear of failure, your fear of being different? Your commitment to becoming the person you're capable of becoming. Your commitment to making the contribution only you can make. I've had the privilege of working with some of the most successful people in the world. And do you know what sets them apart? It's not just their work ethic, although they all work incredibly hard. It's not just their intelligence, although they're all smart in their own ways. What sets them apart is their willingness to walk their own path. They aren't copycats. They are trend followers. They have the courage to look at conventional wisdom and say, that might work for most people, but it's not right for my vision, my values, my journey. I remember one entrepreneur who built a company completely contrary to industry norms. While everyone else was focused on rapid scaling and market share, he focused on profitability and customer experience. He was criticized. He was mocked. Industry publications wrote articles about how his approach was doomed to fail. 10 years later, his company was thriving while many of his critics had gone bankrupt chasing scale without substance. When I asked him how he withstood the criticism, he said, "I wasn't trying to build their company. I was trying to build mine." That's the essence of focusing on your own path. Understanding that your journey is uniquely yours. The metrics that matter to others might not be the metrics that should matter to you. The timeline that works for others might not be the timeline that works for you. The strategies that succeeded for others might not be the strategies that will succeed for you. The discipline of self-trust. To focus on your own path requires another skill, one that's rarely discussed but absolutely essential: self-trust. Self-trust is the ability to listen to your own inner wisdom above the noise of outside opinions. It's the discipline of checking in with yourself, your values, your vision, your purpose before making decisions. It's harder than it sounds. We're conditioned from an early age to seek external validation, to look outside ourselves for answers, to trust authorities and experts over our own intuition. But here's what I've observed. The most successful people have an almost stubborn commitment to self-trust. They gather information widely, but they filter that information through their own discernment. They listen to advice, but they don't follow it blindly. They respect expertise, but they don't worship it. I worked with a woman once who was told by multiple experts that her product idea wouldn't work. The market research didn't support it. The focus groups were lukewarm. The industry analysts were skeptical. But she had this deep, unshakable conviction that she was onto something important. She trusted herself enough to persist when all external indicators suggested she should pivot. Today, her product is in millions of homes. Those same experts who dismissed her idea now point to it as an example of innovation. What changed? Not the idea. What changed was the expert's perception of the idea. If she had trusted their judgment over her own, that product would never exist. Self-trust isn't arrogance. It's not ignoring feedback or living in a bubble of your own making. It's having the discernment to know which feedback serves your path and which feedback diverts you from it. It's being secure enough in your vision that you can listen to criticism without being derailed by it. It's being humble enough to adjust course when necessary, but not so impressionable that you change direction with every wind of opinion. This kind of self-trust is a discipline. You build it through consistent action aligned with your values. You build it by making promises to yourself and keeping them. You build it by honoring your own boundaries. You build it by speaking your truth, even when that truth isn't popular. And as you build this self-trust, something remarkable happens. Your path becomes clearer and your steps become more confident. The freedom of non-attachment. Now, as we talk about detaching, letting go, and focusing on your own path, I want to address a common misconception that non-attachment means not caring. Nothing could be further from the truth. Non-attachment isn't apathy. It's not resignation. It's not a passive shrug in the face of life's challenges. Non-attachment is active. It's engaged. It's present. But it's present without the burden of trying to control the uncontrollable or predict the unpredictable. The non-attached person cares deeply. They work diligently. They commit fully. But they don't attach their sense of self to outcomes they can't control. Think about it this way. A gardener plants seeds with care. They water faithfully. They provide the right conditions for growth. But they don't stand over the seed commanding it to grow faster. They don't berate themselves if a storm damages some plants. They don't compare their tomatoes to the neighbor's tomatoes, then feel like a failure if theirs are smaller. They understand the natural order of things. They work with it, not against it. They know what's in their control and what isn't. That's non-attachment. And in that non-attachment is a profound freedom that the attached never know. I've seen people paralyzed by attachment. They can't start a business because they're attached to it being an immediate success. They can't share their art because they're attached to universal praise. They can't speak their truth because they're attached to everyone agreeing with them. Non-attachment liberates you from these self-imposed prisons. It allows you to act without the crushing weight of trying to control how others respond to your actions. There's a paradox here. When you release your attachment to a specific outcome, you often become more effective at creating positive outcomes. When you're not consumed with how your efforts will be received, you can focus all your energy on the quality of those efforts. The non-attached person isn't working any less hard. They're just working without the friction of attachment. And that makes all the difference. The power of present focus. One of the most practical benefits of detaching, letting go, and focusing on your own path is that it allows you to be fully present. Attachment pulls you out of the present moment. It drags you into the past with regrets and resentments. It catapults you into the future with anxieties and expectations. But your power, your effectiveness, your creativity, these exist only in the present moment. I've coached many professionals who were so consumed with where they thought they should be in their careers that they couldn't focus on doing excellent work right where they were. They were physically present but mentally absent, always comparing their current reality to some imagined alternative. As a result, their current work suffered. And ironically, that made their desired future less likely, not more. When you detach from these comparisons and projections, when you let go of the gap between here and there, when you focus on your path right where you are, your effectiveness multiplies. Present focus isn't just a spiritual principle. It's a practical success strategy. It's the ability to bring your full attention, your full creativity, your full energy to the task at hand. The most successful people I've worked with have this quality of presence. They're not constantly checking their phones in meetings. They're not mentally rehearsing their next task while you're talking to them. They're not half listening while scrolling through social media. They're here, fully here. And in that presence, they notice opportunities that others miss. They make connections that others overlook. They build relationships that others don't have the patience to nurture. This is the power of present focus, and it's available only to those who have learned to detach, let go, and commit to their own journey. The clarity of personal values. When you're attached to others' expectations and opinions, your values become cloudy. It's hard to distinguish between what you truly value and what you've been conditioned to value. But when you detach and focus on your own path, you have the opportunity to clarify your personal values. This clarity is transformative. It allows you to make decisions from a place of internal alignment rather than external pressure. I worked with a businessman once who was absolutely miserable. By all external measures, he was successful. He had the corner office, the impressive title, the substantial salary, but he was profoundly unhappy. As we worked together, it became clear that his career choices had been driven by attachment to his father's expectations. His father had been a high-level executive, and he felt an obligation to follow that path. But when we did the work of clarifying his own values, he discovered that what he truly valued was creativity, autonomy, and direct impact on people's lives. Once he had that clarity, he made the bold decision to leave his executive position and start a small creative agency. His income initially dropped by 70%. Many thought he was having a midlife crisis. But he was simply finally honoring his own values. 5 years later, his agency is thriving. He works fewer hours than he did as an executive, but he's more energized than ever. He's doing work that aligns with his values, and that alignment has unleashed a level of creativity and commitment that his previous role never did. That's the power of value clarity. It's not just about feeling good, although that's certainly part of it. It's about unlocking your potential by aligning your actions with your authentic values. And here's what's interesting. When you're clear on your values, detachment becomes easier. You're no longer swayed by every opinion or trend because you have a strong internal compass guiding your decisions. The discipline of boundaries. To detach, let go, and focus on your own path requires another crucial skill, the ability to set and maintain healthy boundaries. Boundaries define where you end and others begin. They clarify what's your responsibility and what isn't. They protect your energy, your focus, your values. Without boundaries, detachment is almost impossible. You'll constantly be pulled into others' dramas, expectations, and agendas. I've seen this play out countless times, and one makes a commitment to focus on their own path, but they lack the boundary skills to protect the commitment. They say yes when they should say no. They take on others' emotions as their own. They allow interruptions and distractions that derail their focus. The result? Their commitment to their own path remains an intention rather than a reality. Boundary setting isn't selfishness. It's stewardship. It's recognizing that your time, energy, and attention are precious resources that deserve to be protected. A friend of mine was trying to write a book while working full-time. She committed to writing from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. every morning. But she struggled because her colleagues would text her early with work questions, and she felt obligated to respond immediately. Her breakthrough came when she set a clear boundary. Her phone went into airplane mode from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. She communicated this boundary to her colleagues. Some were initially resistant, but she held firm. The result? She finished her book in 6 months, and interestingly, her work performance improved because she was more focused and creative during her working hours. That's the power of boundaries. They don't just protect your path from others' intrusions. They also protect others from the resentment you might feel if you're constantly sacrificing your priorities for theirs. Boundaries are an act of honesty. They acknowledge your limits. They communicate your priorities. They establish the conditions under which you can bring your best self to your relationships and responsibilities. And in a world that will take as much as you're willing to give, boundaries aren't just helpful. They're essential. The liberation of self-forgiveness. As you work on detaching, letting go, and focusing on your own path, you'll inevitably have moments of falling back into old patterns. You'll get caught up in comparisons. You'll find yourself attached to outcomes. You'll stray from your path to follow someone else's. This is where self-forgiveness becomes crucial. Without it, these inevitable lapses can turn into reasons to abandon the journey altogether. I've seen this happen. Someone makes a commitment to focus on their own authentic path. They're doing well for a while. Then they have a moment of weakness. Maybe they spend hours scrolling through social media comparing their life to others. Or they make a decision based on external validation rather than internal values. Instead of recognizing this as a normal part of the process, they use it as evidence that they're incapable of change. See, they tell themselves, I'll always be this way. Why even try? Self-forgiveness interrupts this narrative. It says, yes, I slipped. That's part of being human. Now, what did I learn, and how do I return to my path? I worked with an artist who was constantly comparing her work to others in her field. She would make a commitment to focus on developing her unique style, but then she'd see another artist's success and fall into the comparison trap again. Her breakthrough came when she developed a self-forgiveness practice. Whenever she caught herself in comparison, she would say, I forgive myself for this moment of comparison. It doesn't define me or my art. I now choose to refocus on my unique path. Over time, the episodes of comparison became less frequent and less intense. Not because she became perfect, but because she learned to move through these moments with grace rather than getting stuck in them. That's the liberation of self-forgiveness. It keeps you moving forward on your path instead of getting derailed by the inevitable human moments of weakness or forgetfulness. The value of discernment. As you focus on your own path, you'll need to develop discernment about the information, advice, and influences you allow into your life. Not all input is helpful, not all advice is sound, not all influences are positive. Discernment is the ability to distinguish between what serves your path and what diverts you from it. In today's world, this is more challenging than ever. We're bombarded with information, opinions, and expert advice from every direction. Without discernment, it's easy to become overwhelmed or milled. I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and I see this challenge regularly. They read one business book that advocates strategy A, then another that promotes strategy B, which contradicts A. They listen to one podcast host who insists on approach X, then another who champions approach Y, which is incompatible with X. Without discernment, they're left feeling confused and paralyzed. With discernment, they can filter this information through their own values, goals, and circumstances to determine what's truly relevant for their unique situation. Discernment isn't about closing yourself off to new ideas. It's about evaluating those ideas in the context of your own path rather than blindly adopting them because they work for someone else. The discerning person asks, does this align with my values? Does this serve my vision? Is this appropriate for my circumstances? Does this resonate with my intuition and experience? These questions act as filters, allowing in what's helpful and screening out what's distracting or misleading. And here's a key insight about discernment. Sometimes the most popular advice is the least applicable to your unique situation. Just because a strategy or perspective is widely accepted doesn't mean it's right for your path. The most successful people I know are willing to question conventional wisdom. They're willing to test assumptions. They're willing to trust their own judgment even when it leads them in a different direction than the crowd. That's discernment in action, and it's an essential skill for anyone committed to following their own path rather than someone else's formula. The joy of authentic success. When you detach from others' definitions of success, let go of the need for external validation, and focus on your own authentic path, you discover something remarkable, a joy in your work, and life that no amount of conventional success can provide. I've met people with impressive titles, substantial wealth, and public recognition who are profoundly unfulfilled. I've also met people with modest careers and minimal public recognition who were deeply satisfied. The difference wasn't in their external achievements, it was in their relationship to those achievements. Those who were chasing success as defined by others, by their industry, their peers, their parents, society at large, never felt they had enough. There was always someone with more money, more recognition, more influence. Their attachment to these external metrics kept them on a hedonic treadmill, always running but never arriving. Those who had defined success on their own terms, aligned with their values, their purpose, their authentic interests, experienced a different quality of satisfaction. They weren't immune to challenges or setbacks, but they had a baseline contentment that wasn't dependent on external validation. This is the joy of authentic success. It's not the fleeting high of public recognition or material acquisition. It's the deep satisfaction of living in alignment with your truest self, of making the contribution you were uniquely designed to make. I remember speaking with a teacher who had been offered an administrative position with significantly higher pay and status. All her colleagues were urging her to take it, seeing it as a step up in her career. But as we talked, it became clear that her true gift and joy was in direct interaction with students. The administrative role would take her away from that. She declined the promotion to the shock of her colleagues. Years later, she told me it was one of the best decisions she ever made. She continued to thrive in the classroom, developing innovative teaching methods that eventually gained recognition far beyond her school. She wrote books, she gave workshops, she influenced education policy, all while continuing to do the direct teaching work she loved. Had she taken that promotion to please others or fit someone else's definition of career advancement, none of that would have happened. By staying true to her own path, she not only found personal fulfillment, but ultimately had a greater impact than she would have had as an administrator. That's the paradox of authentic success. When you stop chasing impact as defined by others and instead fully commit to your authentic path, your impact often expands in ways you couldn't have planned or predicted. The joy isn't just in the outcomes, though. It's in the daily experience of doing work that feels true to who you are. It's waking up engaged rather than resigned. It's being present with what you're creating rather than constantly looking over your shoulder at what others are doing. This joy acts as a compass. When you feel it, you know you're on your path. When it's absent for extended periods, it's a signal to reassess and realign. The legacy of authentic living. When you detach, let go, and focus on your own path, you're not just changing your own experience. You're changing what you leave behind. You're shaping your legacy. Legacy isn't just for the famous or the wealthy. Each of us leaves an imprint through how we live, the choices we make, the way we treat others, the work we produce, the values we embody. When you live attached to others' expectations, constantly seeking external validation, your legacy becomes diluted. It's a pale imitation of what might have been if you'd had the courage to follow your authentic path. But when you commit to your unique journey, your legacy gains clarity and power. It becomes a true expression of your gifts, your values, your perspective. I once worked with a man in his 60s who was filled with regret. He had built a successful career by most external measures, but he had done it by suppressing his true interests and talents. He had followed a path laid out by his family and industry rather than listening to his own inner wisdom. As he approached retirement, he realized that his legacy would be a lifetime of work that never really represented who he was. It was competent, even impressive in some ways, but it wasn't authentically his. This realization led him to make a dramatic change in his final working years. He stepped away from his executive role and launched a small nonprofit focused on an issue he deeply cared about. Many thought he was having a late life crisis. But what he was actually doing was reclaiming his authentic path. And in just 5 years of this aligned work, he created a legacy that felt more meaningful to him than the previous 30 years combined. His story illustrates an important truth. It's never too late to commit to your authentic path. And even a short period of aligned living can create a legacy more meaningful than decades of following someone else's script. Your legacy isn't just what you leave behind when you're gone. It's the impact you're having right now, today, through how authentically you're living. It's the permission you give others to honor their own truth when you honor yours. It's the possibilities you open up for others when you demonstrate the courage to follow your unique path. In a world filled with imitation and conformity, authentic living is a revolutionary act. It's a statement that your unique perspective, your unique gifts, your unique journey matters. And that's a legacy worth creating. The daily practice of detachment. As we move toward concluding our time together, I want to emphasize that detaching, letting go, and focusing on your own path isn't a destination you reach once and for all. It's a daily practice, a continual choice, a way of engaging with life. Each day brings new opportunities to practice detachment from outcomes you can't control. Each day presents situations where letting go serves you better than holding on. Each day asks you to choose between following your authentic path or being diverted by others' expectations or opinions. This daily practice isn't always easy. Our attachment habits are deeply ingrained. Our cultural conditioning pulls strongly toward comparison and external validation. Our own fears often tempt us away from the uncertainty of our unique path toward the seeming safety of conformity. That's why I recommend creating specific practices that reinforce your commitment to this way of living. These might include a morning reflection where you reconnect with your values and set intentions for the day. Regular digital detoxes to break the cycle of social comparison. Journaling to process emotions and clarify your authentic desires. Meditation to practice non-attachment to thoughts and feelings. Regular conversations with trusted friends who support your authentic path. Periodic reviews of your commitments to ensure they align with your values. Celebration of small wins that represent progress on your unique journey. These practices serve as anchors, keeping you connected to your commitment even when the currents of life would pull you in other directions. I worked with a writer who established a powerful daily practice. Each morning, before looking at email or social media, she would write in her journal, "Today I commit to my unique path as a writer. I release attachment to outcomes I cannot control. I let go of comparison. I focus on creating work that is authentically mine." This simple ritual helped her maintain clarity and resolve in an industry that constantly tempts writers to compare themselves to others, chase trends, or adjust their voice to match what's currently popular. Your practices might look different. The important thing is that they be regular, intentional, and aligned with your commitment to detach, let go, and focus on your own path. The invitation before you. Ladies and gentlemen, as we've explored this topic together, I've shared perspectives on the cost of attachment, the illusion of control, the art of letting go, the courage to focus on your own path, the discipline of self-trust, the freedom of non-attachment, the power of present focus, the clarity of personal values, the discipline of boundaries, the liberation of self-forgiveness, the value of discernment, the joy of authentic success, the legacy of authentic living, and the daily practice of detachment. These aren't just concepts to think about. They're invitations to live differently, to engage with life from a place of clarity rather than conditioning, to make choices from a place of authentic values rather than external pressure, to measure your success by internal alignment rather than external validation. The invitation before you is powerful to detach from what was never yours to control, to let go of what no longer serves you, and to focus with full commitment on the path that is uniquely yours to walk. This invitation doesn't promise an absence of challenges. Your authentic path will still include obstacles, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But it does promise a different relationship to those challenges. When you're aligned with your authentic path, challenges become opportunities for growth rather than reasons for despair. Setbacks become course corrections rather than evidence of failure. Doubts become invitations to deeper clarity rather than signals to retreat. I've witnessed this transformation in countless individuals across every industry and walk of life. The executive who found the courage to lead according to her values rather than industry norms. The artist who stopped imitating popular styles and developed his unique voice. The parent who released society's definitions of success and supported their child's authentic interests. The entrepreneur who built a business aligned with her purpose rather than following the standard startup playbook. What these diverse stories share is a common thread: the decision to detach, let go, and focus on an authentic path led not just to personal fulfillment, but to a unique contribution that would have been impossible had they continued on a path defined by others. That's the paradox at the heart of this approach to life. By releasing your attachment to what others think, by letting go of external definitions of success, by focusing on your unique path, you don't diminish your impact, you amplify it. You don't become selfish, you become more genuinely helpful. You don't become isolated, you become more authentically connected. Because the world doesn't need more imitations. It doesn't need more people following formulas. It needs the unique contribution that only you can make when you have the courage to detach, let go, and focus on your own authentic path. Ladies and gentlemen, that courage is available to you right now today, not in some distant future when conditions are perfect, not when you have more security or more support or more certainty. Now, in this moment, with the circumstances and resources currently available to you, the first step is simply the decision to begin, to notice where you're attached to outcomes you can't control, to identify what you need to let go of, to clarify the authentic path that calls to you beneath the noise of others' expectations. This decision isn't made once. It's made daily, sometimes hourly. It's made in small choices as well as large ones. It's made in how you respond to criticism, how you handle setbacks, how you celebrate successes, how you measure progress. But with each choice to detach, to let go, to focus on your path, you build momentum. You strengthen your capacity for authentic living. You make the next choice a little easier, a little clearer. And over time, these choices compound. They create not just a different way of working or achieving, but a different way of being. A life characterized not by the exhausting pursuit of external validation, but by the energizing alignment with your truest self. That, my friends, is a life worth creating, a journey worth taking, a path worth following. The invitation is before you. The choice is yours. And I believe in your capacity to choose wisely. Thank you.